Brought to you by Penguin.
No Name Lane by Howard Linskey. Read by David Leon. Prologue. Girl number 4. County Durham, 1993. He watched the girl until he was certain she was perfect. Only then did he risk approaching her. It was never difficult to get them to come with him. The hard part was staying calm. Even as his heart was thumping so hard in his chest, he was convinced she must be able to hear it. He drove her somewhere quiet and stopped the car, waiting until he was sure they were entirely alone. Sometimes he'd bundle a girl into the boot so he could drive her miles away, but this lane was isolated enough. So he climbed in the back seat to get her. He ignored her terrified pleas and reached for her, easily brushing her weak little hands aside, forcing her head back until the flesh of her tiny neck was exposed. He clamped his hands around her throat and began to squeeze, tightening his grip as her desperate struggle began. He closed his eyes. It was better if he could not see the girl's little face, for she did not understand. How could she even begin to comprehend what he was doing for her? He squeezed harder and harder, and wouldn't let go until the moment when her struggles finally ceased, and her tiny body went limp. He looked down at the lifeless young girl in his arms, and whispered the special words he always used when he'd saved one. Suffer the little children to come unto me. Chapter 1. It all began with a phone call, as these things tend to. Hello? Tom answered, and there was a pause, as if the person on the other end had suddenly realized the magnitude of what they were doing and decided against it. Hello, he prompted. I've got a story, the woman blurted, and he strained to listen to her against the sounds of dozens of journalists talking over the tap-tap-tap of busy fingers hitting keyboards, while the insistent ringing from competing phones could be heard all across the room. Okay, answered Tom. What kind of story? There was another pause until finally she said, a bloody big one. And there was something about the nervous, agitated way in which she spoke that made Tom Carney take the woman seriously. Tabloid stories generally start with a tip-off. This one began because a woman chose the biggest red top in the country to tell her side of it. Aggrieved men and women called its London office every day. Some were wronged, other desperate, some just plain demented. It was Tom Carney's job to perform triage on them, as his legendary editor, Alex the Doc Doherty, put it. From the French verb trier, meaning to sift and select, he was told. Your job is to separate the shit from the sugar. The people who called always assumed their story was worth a life-changing amount of money. It was rare, however, for their particular grievance to actually make it into print. The tabloid Tom Carney worked for had a daily circulation of 4 million copies. Everyone wanted to be in the paper. Politicians from all sides, models, actors, rock bands, the wannabes, gunnabes, has-beens and never-wases, along with many thousands of what their foul-mouthed editor called the Great Unwashed, by which he meant the general public. Only the really juicy stuff ended up in the paper. Sometimes, though, one of these callers would turn out to be peddling neither shit nor sugar, but genuine gold. The anonymous woman who phoned that morning was randomly connected to one of a large number of journalists manning the news desks. Afterwards, Tom Carney would often wonder about the direction his life might have taken had he not been in the office that morning, or if the call had gone to one of the many other reporters in the newsroom. The simple act of answering the phone that day changed everything for Tom, though he could never have known it at the time. What's it about, then? He prompted, when she was not immediately forthcoming. This story of yours. A very famous man, someone high up. Right, he replied, non-committedly.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?